Hello, my name's Simon Parker. I'm the guest editor of Exhibition News, and I'm feeling very perky today because one, spring has sprung, and two, my guest today is Nina Wright. Hello, Nina.
Hello.
So Nina and I work together at UBM, and I've followed Nina's career. She has had a fascinating career in media, not just events. In fact, probably more on the content publishing side, certainly to start with. She started at the Builder Group and in the construction titles and worked across a range of construction titles. The Builder Group, you may know, was then bought by UBM. She then did a range of senior roles within UBM, MD, Commercial Director and Transformation Director, just to name three. I'm sure there are more. And then sort of embarked on a really exciting chapter, I think, post-merger, as she became CEO of the New Scientist magazine. So a really varied and an interesting career. Just sort of going back a stage, so you joined the Builder Group. What attracted you to? I'm guessing it wasn't the glamour of construction; it was more media. But tell me a little bit about those early days and that decision to get into to media.
Yeah, so I sort of fell into it really, as I think quite a lot of people did back then. So I had studied a criminal psychology degree, been travelling, and then came back and sort of picked up the Guardian, Tuesday media edition of the Guardian, and lots of jobs. And I saw, a number of sort of circled one. I thought that looks interesting. I was actually interested in construction, Simon, having grown up. So there was a natural, and I knew of the titles beforehand. So that's kind of how I fell into it. And then quite quickly, I realised I'd found an industry that I really liked and a job that I could be quite good at, and so kind of moved up through the ranks of sales, and then before sort of jumping across to become a publisher, and then we had the sort of the UBM journey that sort of followed after that. So it was by pure chance really that I sort of ended up in media.
And they had an amazing reputation because they were really close to their markets, I guess.
Yeah, they were. And it was sort of, we talk about it a lot now, but I think, Building in particular, was a magazine for its community. And so it was subscription driven. It had newsstand as well. But it was all about, that kind of being immersed in and embedded into a very large, but a sort of niche vertical, and everything that kind of came with that. So you were able to do all sorts of sort of revenue diversification, from quite early on.
And you went on that journey that many people have, which is working for a relatively small. I mean, they were a reasonable sized business, but not as big as obviously UBM, who then bought them. How did that feel? And was there big changes, or was it you were allowed to kind of get on with it and do what you'd been doing before?
So there were big changes. I think it was. I'll choose my words carefully, but I think it was quite a brutal integration actually at the back then, and so things were certainly not as they were before. And I think it was at that point I kind of was like, okay, you've got some choices to make here. You're either going to get with the programme, as it were, or you're going to, pursue sort of a different career somewhere else. And actually, the acquisition was done whilst I was off on maternity leave with my first child, and then, came back to work at UBM. And actually, that was a process in itself. But and I realised I had a skills gap. I didn't really have any significant experience in large-scale exhibitions. We've done face-to-face events in terms of conferences and awards, and we've done quite well with those. But I thought actually you're going to have to learn about the exhibitions industry if you really kind of want to go on, because it was an obvious skills gap for me.
Yeah, and obviously there were benefits of being part of that bigger group. Could you explain or expand on what they? Well, I mean, they may not have been, but can you expand or not on that?
Yeah, there were. I think that you had people to go to who had expertise. It was just a wealth of expertise in a large organisation, specialist expertise actually. So be that, and that was kind of right across the board. So the standouts for me were in things like marketing. I felt was first class. I thought that, but there were other things that obviously you had a great sort of, finance infrastructure and HR infrastructure. And these are things where you don't appreciate them until you're benefiting from them necessarily, or that they're taken away from you. And so, but also that kind of investment in people as well. Fantastic. I was very fortunate to attend some absolutely almost life-changing, sort of business leadership programs. In fact, it was called the BLP at UBM, where, which was over sort of 12, 18 months. And it was just, we traveled all over the world with that. I met colleagues who I'm still, in touch with today. And I think that those sorts of things are really invaluable. It's fantastic.
So there was a strong, and I was obviously there at the time, there was a really strong culture, I think, a really strong positive culture. And what you were then given was a big responsibility, which was around transformation, which, as anybody that's done it will know, is a really difficult thing to do. And this was around sales and marketing transformation, and essentially a kind of centralization process, I suppose. I'm probably simplifying it too much, but can you talk us through how that came about and how you went about it?
Yes. So the opportunity came up. UBM had a new, as you know, global CEO who was, very keen on, having sort of centralised centres of excellence and sort of changing the operating structure of an organisation. And, for me, when I was approached about, taking the role, the timing was quite right for me, because it was going to take me out of my comfort zone. I was certainly stepping outside of my comfort zone, but I also knew that I was going to learn a lot. And that was a real gift, and learn a lot in things that I hadn't experienced before. But I think I also recognised at the time that it would signal I wouldn't be going back to the role that I'd done before. It was going to be sort of a profound change for me. And that also meant that I might not continue at UBM, but it was an opportunity that I felt I couldn't sort of turn down. And actually, when I thought about my career path, I had an aspiration to want to be a sort of a CEO at a point in time. I knew that this would be a really important thing for me to have done. And it would sit very well in terms of, experience for, future jobs that I was going to want to be involved with or look to do. And so I just was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And then, as you know me very well, Simon, I'm quite sort of structured and process driven as an individual. And so when I, set about it, I thought, actually, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it really well and to the best of my ability. So, that started with assembling a team, which I did, and then just kind of, lived and breathed it for however long it was, 18 months, 2 years, I think.
And what were the sort of principles behind? I mean, why were you doing it?
Why was I doing it?
No, not you individually, the job. I mean, why was the business embarking on this, sort of transformational route? What were the outcomes?
So I think it was about creating a series of specialists, really, and specialisms, and it kind of goes back to the point we talked about right at the beginning, which was, when you're working in various communities, it's about kind of being embedded in those communities and having specialisms that can work really effectively, within those. So if you take marketing as an example, actually marketing is it's a really sort of broad profession, but there are lots of individual sort of roles and skills that within that. Well, we tended to have generalist marketeers, and actually, there was and is, I think, a need for having specialists, whether that be, sort of, I don't know, digital specialists as one example, and then within that, a series of roles, whether you might have brand specialists. So there was that drive to go from generalist to specialist. And actually also, I think from a marketing perspective, elevate that function more as well, because it is, it's such a powerful function within an organisation, within media organisations, because a lot of data sits within that as well, or, is very driven by that. And so I think it was really professionalising that and giving that a much bigger platform. And then from a sales perspective, you have salespeople who have different skills. So, some salespeople are fantastic at generating new business. Some people are naturally very well suited to nurturing and enhancing business. Whereas, again, we had generous sales expertise. The intention was to give the right skilled sales approaches, but also for our salespeople to spend more time selling. If you look at the average time salespeople were spending selling versus doing all the other stuff, it was kind of, there was a compelling case to say, well, we want to have our salespeople selling. We want to kind of take away as much of that sort of either admin or processing, or where possible, we're bringing sales force and creating a new sales support function as well. So it was kind of wholesale change, really.
So and having gone through it, I mean, it's quite a disruptive process. It's a all-encompassing. I mean, I saw the energy and the time and the hours that you put into it, and the organisation as well. Do you think it was the right thing to do, and do you think that the results justified all of that, short-term disruption?
So I think it was. I think it worked in this organisation because it was of size and of scale, and so you could, you could do that. It was disruptive, and it was a huge program of change management and sort of onboarding and everything that we had to do as part of that. Was it worth it? I think it was worth it, because there's some things in there that are sort of quite common sense. And I think that, we were probably, as an industry, slightly behind the curve in terms of creating or developing or enhancing those sort of specialist roles, and the sort of associated career paths that go with those. I think that there was potentially, I think toward the end there were some areas of sort of centralisation that got entwined a bit with decision making autonomy, and I think centralising functions to help understand and to better serve and to drive forward, embedding in and sort of revenues from communities is fantastic. But if you're centralising sake, I think there was a reasonable way.
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive undertaking, and I think you're absolutely right. There's some stuff that we should have been doing years ago that we instigated through that process. But anybody undertaking it would realise that it is just such a massive task, and you're also absolutely right in that it needs to be methodically planned and structured, and the processes need to be, and it's also about ultimately taking people with you, isn't it? And I think you did that extremely well.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And then moving to more current, sort of the current situation, and in a way you kind of went back to your roots, in a sense that you went back to primarily a publishing business, a smaller business, a more sort of agile sort of platform. Why did you take that decision? And just tell us a little bit more about, what New Scientists do and the community you now serve.
Yeah, so I think that the appeal for me was on two fronts, really. So, New Scientist is a pretty iconic brand. It's read all over the world. Everyone from, Elon Musk to Captain America subscribed to New Scientist. And I think that its the values really stood out for me. It was very trusted, respected, very recognisable, authoritative, and it's actually in a sector which is even more so now, but really important and increasingly so. And the last sort of 12, 15 months have accelerated that. So that was the first thing. It was just this incredible brand. And I thought opportunities like that aren't going to come along every day. And then the second was the opportunity to take on my first CEO role, and to be that sort of, driver of and responsible for, transformational growth. And that was really the agenda with this product, which was to take what it is and then, drive that forward and sort of grow it. And that started with sort of building and developing the right team, spending time developing and then subsequently delivering on the strategy and that sort of growth ambition, and then sort of evolving the business that we had and developing lots of new products and going for new audiences and so on and so forth. So that was the real appeal with the job. And, I loved it.
Because having looked at it, I mean, you've got, you really are embracing multi-channel, and going through the sort of spectrum of products. You've got podcasts, you've even got a shop selling branded face masks and jigsaws of the moon. And
yes.
podcasts, obviously. I'm sure. Yeah, it's sold out. I couldn't get it. And then you have the Academy, which I thought was fascinating as well, which is online learning. I guess the question is that around testing product, or have you got a lot of insight on that community and you knew that it was going to work, and therefore you've obviously branched out into those various areas?
Yeah, so I think the start point was that reader revenue is the core at New Scientist. It's got a very loyal and very trusting audience, and but we also recognised that there was a lot of opportunity for revenue diversification with the brand, and it sort of plays to the point of we think that science is for everyone, but if you look at the sort of original subscriptions product, it serves a certain audience in a certain way, and we wanted to develop a set of new products and also develop more digital revenues, because to play to different audiences, perhaps those that are maybe less affluent or maybe even time poor or interested in a particular sort of vertical. And so we sort of we are developing that, but at the same time launch a series of sort of content initiatives, so newsletters. I think we're up to 8 or 9 different newsletters that we do now. We do audio, so we have a weekly podcast, 2 weekly podcasts actually, and then we're also just about to launch an audio edition of the magazine. And then we do videos, so we do things like Science with Sam, and which are on YouTube, and then lots of interviews, all sorts of different videos. And the purpose of all of these is really about engaging with different customer groups as part of a sort of customer journey that takes them to ultimately being a subscriber of our product, of whether that be a bundle subscriber or digital or print, but at the same time, really driving new digital revenues as well. And the courses is an example, of that, where we did a trial last year and then sort of rolling out our NS Academy, which is our sort of online courses, and it's really rich learning. And I think it's the products that we develop are reflective of the community that we're in. They are very knowledge thirsty and knowledge hungry, and so we kind of we play to that. But we also try to appeal to different demographics too. So the Science with Sam, which is on YouTube, is just science explained in bite-sized chunks for all sorts of age groups, and so it's kind of different products for different
and which is fascinating. And presumably what sits behind that is a load of data and analysis and testing and some obviously bright minds that are thinking of great new product. How does all that happen? I mean, you've got obviously you've got choices to make as to what products you do, and how do you make those choices? And
yeah. So we know our audience well. We know our community really, really well, and we use data. Data is a lot, but I would say that we're still, we are nowhere near data maturity at New Scientist. We are at the start really of our data journey. So and what I mean by that is our data is held in a variety of different places where we extract and sort of interrogate it and then decide what to do with that. So we've had to build the right tools for us to be able to do that, but most importantly it's about bringing in expertise into the business. And so data skills, new digital skills are areas where we've really focused and sort of are continuing to enhance and develop our expertise in that sector. But data is really key, but I think it's about knowing what to do with that. And we're very lucky that we have a very engaged audience who are not shy in coming forward and telling us what they
so they'll tell you if it's rubbish. Yeah,
they'll tell you if it's rubbish, and we get literally sort of hundreds of emails and letters from our subscribers each week. But they're also really keen to be involved with things. So an example could be if we when we were trialing the academy, we reached out to our community and said, would you be interested in trialing the courses for us? We sent it out, I think, one email, and I'm not joking, we got thousands of people that came back.
Wow.
And were like, please, yes, please. And so you're able therefore to test things and try things with that group, because they are really good, because they feel that New Scientist is theirs, and and they have a sense of ownership over that, over the product, and we kind of love that.
And do you think I'd like to move on to events in a second, but before that, do you think there are lessons from that you could apply to the more B2B world? I guess the level of engagement that you've got, paid for subscribers, so they are by the very nature engaged in the product. Is that more difficult to achieve within a B2B environment, do you think?
I would say actually it's possibly easier to achieve in a B2B environment, because one of the challenges that we have with consumers is actually finding out as much rich information about our customers as possible is sometimes a bit harder if it is a direct to consumer product versus, say, a B2B product, where I've found that often in B2B people are more willing to share more information about themselves because it's more in a professional sense, in a professional environment, than perhaps they are personally. So I think that from a B2B perspective, you have access to, I think, sometimes more information about your audiences, or the information available.
Good point. And then the live events, I mean, they're multi-award winning. I think you've won maybe 2 or 3 possibly AEO awards, and obviously it's been frustrating because you haven't been able to run them. So sort of 2 questions. One, the COVID impact on you, and I'm guessing that it's been quite positive on subscription, but obviously no live revenues, and also sort of what the plans for events going forward.
So pre-COVID, our live sort of in-person events program combined 3 main products all the time. It had these one-day masterclasses, which were normally at a weekend, one day, all day, people would pay to go. There would be a series of experts on a particular topic, and you would spend all day there with like-minded individuals learning about whatever it would be. We had we've launched a series of evening lectures as well, and we were gearing up last year to run quite a few of those. And then we had obviously our big sort of flagship 4-day show, New Scientist Live, which takes place at Excel, and you've got sort of 40,000 visitors over the 4 days that came to that. And obviously we didn't run that last year, and so we had to pivot quite quickly last year. I'm telling a story that I think a lot of exhibition organisers and publishers would have shared, which would be launched virtual events. We did the first one free, just to sort of test the water and to sort of learn from that. And then we took what was our sort of in-person evening lecture series, and we just did it all virtually, so we did it all online. And then we charged that, and that was a paying model. So last year we delivered 16 of those paid evening lectures. We did some subscriber-only ones as well. And then towards the end of the year, we also did a full day, just sort of New Scientist Live. It was focusing on the future of food and farming, and we had kind of breakout stages. And that was a slightly different model. So it was some paid, some free to attend. We had sponsorship revenue there as part of that. And we were just experimenting with that particular format. And we had, I think, 5,000 people came, during the course of the day, which was fantastic. And so we learned a lot from that. What are we doing this year? So we think that, our assumptions are that, the likelihood is that for us, significant in-person, event recovery will be back end of this year, possibly, into next year.
And is there pent-up demand for it, do you think? I mean, do you think that, as soon as you announce the dates, then people will flock back in the same sort of numbers and you'll get the same levels of sponsorship? Or is it going to be a sort of slower trickle back?
That's a really good question, and I don't think we know the answer to that yet.
Okay.
We're going to carry on doing the digital events for sure this year. We've got 38 of them that we're doing this year, with sort of north of 30,000 attendees who come to those. My sense is that behaviours have changed, right, over the last 12 months. We all know that. The open question is, how is this a permanent change, or not? People have been at home, they've been watching, reading, listening, so how they're consuming information and content has also kind of changed. But I think it very much depends on the kind of event that you're doing. So if you're doing things where it's perhaps what I would call maybe knowledge capture or learning or personal development, you're quite comfortable, I think, doing that virtually and doing that at home, and that works quite well for our audiences anyway. But actually, there is this other huge side of live events, which is networking, and shouldn't underestimate that. The power of that face-to-face interaction, I don't think will dissipate or disappear. And then there's all the experiential stuff. You want to prod it and touch it and feel it, and and do all of those things. So, and that's a reflection, I think, of human nature and human curiosity, and you cannot replicate that digitally. So I think, and
I guess, the key is, you're absolutely right. I mean, we don't know what it's going to come back like, or at what scale, and the key is that you've got a range of products and offerings to be able to accommodate whatever the long-term trends are, which you have, isn't it? Because you've got, you're not just sort of wedded to one big trade show per year, and you.
I think that's right, but it's also, I can speak sort of personally, I really miss people. I'm functioning. We're working from home. We work really hard on communication. I'm, spending more time probably with sort of my team and, visible with the business than you could argue maybe previously. But I miss being around people. I miss the positive interaction, and I think that can translate to the live event world too. People miss it, right? And because people by their very nature are sociable beings, and that for me, I don't think I think it will come
won't go away.
The things that were potentially of consideration, as I see it, are the vaccine program. So when you think about kind of international travel, I think that there's that will play a really important role in people's ability and willingness to travel for exhibitors and visitors alike. So I think that's important. I think also, no disrespect to all CFOs out there, but CFOs have had P&Ls for the last 18 months that have not had the travel costs on them, and that is something that I think businesses will need to think about and to tackle. But if I were a betting person, I would not be betting on digital events replacing live events.
That's good. Good to hear. Well, thinking. I mean, sort of moving then on to the future for you, because you've just had a massive change. Congratulations. You've sold the business to DMG, to the Daily Mail Group. I guess firstly, why DMG, and secondly, what that then means for you guys, because I'm guessing that's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. So I think that DMG had been interested in New Scientist for some time. We are a subscription-driven business, and that kind of sustainable and those recurring revenues are attractive to acquirers, and I think they were attractive to DMGT. But our ambition is, we want to be the world's leading STEM media company, STEM publisher, and to do that requires investment, and it requires a long-term view and long-term investment. Subs are one area of opportunity for us. Internationally, we do have a US edition and an Australia edition, and we do sell magazines around the world, but we're scratching the surface of that, and I think there's huge opportunity to grow this brand internationally, and DMG to recognise that and very interested in that, but that doesn't happen overnight. That requires, it does take a long-term view. But it's not just about subscriptions. It's the bit I talked about earlier, things like, that's digital revenue streams, building a big courses business, we think is a really exciting, new product area for us. E-commerce, something for publishing, as well. And then also, when we think about our live events program, there's a whole world out there. We don't really serve it. And the thing is that science has never been, more sort of front and centre. If you look at the two biggest issues in the world today, climate and COVID, they're science, right? So there are huge areas where there's scientific interest. And so the timing, I think, is right. And the timing is right for that acquisition, for us to, work together and to, accelerate that growth of the brand.
Wow. And going back to what we said earlier on about the Builder Group and the integration into UBM, do you sense that this is going to be a bit more lighter touch and clearly what an acquirer doesn't want to do is destroy the value of what he's acquiring? Has their approach been like that?
Yeah, very much so. And I think that, that when you spend a sum of money buying a company, the last thing that you want to do is to sort of disrupt that. And so I think that where we're in a position where we are going to be able to pick the very best bits if you like, of everything that working for a very large and very successful, global media company, one of the most successful in the world, I would argue, is really appealing for us to be able to do. But at the same time, new scientists seek new scientists, and it has to be sort of, nurtured and allowed to be new scientists and keep that identity, keep that sort of culture within a culture, if you like. And, my experiences of working with the team at DMGT is everybody's on the same page.
Brilliant. Well, look, that's quite a fitting time to finish, and we've overrun, and I could talk to you all day, and that's been fascinating. So, Nina, thank you so much for your time today, and good luck with everything that is ahead of you. I'm sure the New Scientist will go from strength to strength. So thank you, Nina.